Wanna talk? So let's talk. Here. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
Welcome to Talk to Solomon. This is a show where we talk about issues without concern for sponsors, without concern for political correctness, without concern for being liked. I speak for myself, but I think I speak for the panel. We do what we think is in the best interest of right versus wrong, God versus godless, America versus the destruction of America. Our panel is Chief Steve Davis, former law enforcement, former military, current patriot, and Dr. Alan Keyes, one of America's great treasures of intellect and integrity. I will start with you, Alan. We are seeing possibly the beginning of the end of a narcissist, disingenuous, dishonest, godless, un-American thug who happens to be president, or at least is called president. And right now, we are seeing things happening. Now, many say he may be rotten, but he's not stupid, and he's letting the IRS revelations loose. He's letting the AP revelations loose because Benghazi will get him impeached. These things will just get him uninvited to some social gatherings. Your thoughts?
Well, Stan, rightly understood, I sadly believe that everything that we're seeing is of a piece, but that the tactical maneuver that has them seeking to put the spotlight on the abuse of the IRS is actually something that ought to get people to think about what's really going on overall. Interestingly, it comes in the wake, as you probably know, of Obama having given a speech in which he was actually telling people how silly they are to think that the government would ever seek to tyrannize over anyone. Do you remember that?
Oh, very short time ago.
Just a very short time
Ohio
ago.
State University.
Just a very short time ago, he said he's trying to pretend that actually being sensitive to the possibility of an aim or end of people in power, that is to establish, to fasten on the people of this country a tyrannical regime. Well, that's just terrible. That's unthinkable. Nobody would abuse power in that way in America, after all, and acting as if anybody who thinks that is crazy, the usual thing. Now, step number one, that admonition is absolutely contrary to what the founders of this country continually told people they had to do. That they had to be vigilant, that they had to be on the lookout to get at the very first stirrings of tyranny in principle. As James Madison wrote in a remonstrance that he was joined in by other people in Virginia when they were talking about the proper way to deal with any tyrannical design that seeks to curtail the free exercise of religion. So the founders were just very clear that you wanted to anticipate tyranny. You didn't want to wait until the chains were being fastened on you and the people were being thrown into prison and they had consolidated their control of police and military forces that could be used to oppress you. You wanted to recognize the intention before it was put into actual effect, before the power required to impose it upon you was gathered and could be applied. But Barack Obama says, no, go to sleep. Reminded me, and others, I think, of that scene in the Star Wars movie where Obi-Wan Kenobi has gotten control with his supposed power over the Force. He is controlling the minds of the guards and other people. And while they're up to their shenanigans, he's basically waving them off and saying, nothing happening here. Go your way. Don't see what's going on. Shut your eyes to it. That's Barack Obama. That's what he's trying to do now to the American people. So it has to come as a particular shock, doesn't it? When suddenly, in the midst of this notion that nothing like this happens, he and his people are going to let it out that, oh, guess what? We have been abusing the power of the IRS in order to try to hobble and cripple and maim in a financial, economic, and legal sense those who are opposed to our agenda. Now here's what I think people ought to be thinking, though, Stan. Let's see, the fact that he's willing to tell us that they have been lying about that. In other words, his notion that you wouldn't abuse government power is a lie. And he lets you see that it's a lie with respect to this business with the IRS. Rather than just start focusing on what they're doing with the IRS, you ought to wake up and say, but wait a minute, if he is lying with respect to this in terms of the abuse of power, what else is he lying about? If this agenda violates what he said that would never happen and actually represents the abuse of power for tyrannical purposes, and he's admitting that this is going on and they're letting us see it and be preoccupied with it, what everybody ought to be asking, and this is what you were saying then, what is it that they don't want us to look at? Well, I think, and I've written about this today, I'll be putting it up on my blog tomorrow, I think that we need to, instead of just being all preoccupied with what they want us to look at, which is the IRS abuses and so forth and so on. And by the way, Stan, what I'm about to say is a statement, what they call a statement in law, I think, contrary to interest, right? Since in the universe that I help to sustain with, fundraising and other kinds of things, a lot of the people the IRS has been harassing are people I work with and work with very closely. So this directly affects me, what they're doing. But I say, don't get all preoccupied with that. Instead, look at what they're trying to distract you from, the Benghazi business. Look at the fact that that Benghazi business is focused on a situation where they actually seem to have been willing to sacrifice the lives of an American ambassador and personnel in order to do what, Stan? Everybody's acting as if the big question is that about whether Hillary lied and whether Obama lied and whether the spokesman lied. Look, you guys, the Obama faction, the whole Obama administration, indeed the whole person of Obama himself is a lie. We know this. The whole cloth from which this administration is made is a lie. So let's take it for granted that they're lying. Lips moving, lying, okay? These people lie, and they are lying. And he just admitted that they have been lying about something he just spoke about, and now we're supposed to forget that and act as if the big question is Hillary lying? Was the president lying? Was the spokesman lying? And so forth. No, y'all. The big question is, we know they're lying. What did the lie serve? What was the aim or end of the lie? You see, that's what we need to be focused on. Let's not worry about what they're lying. Of course they're lying. So we look at the nature of the lie. And the nature of the lie was to say, America is not at war with terrorism. There's no war with the terrorists. Move right along, nothing going on there. Right? No war with the terrorists. Instead, what's happening is a spontaneous outburst of resentment against America's policies and arrogance and military and economic domination and so forth and so on. Come on, y'all. Why do people act as if that's some new thing that they're doing? Obama and people like him, people steeped in that Marxist, Leninist, Stalininsky, communist garbage, have basically taken that view of the United States always. It's the very premise of who they are. So they're just taking it and they're actually living it out for us now. So that when they say it, you have to say to yourself, oh, wait a minute. That's a way of saying that when these people attack us, it's our own fault. It's nothing they're doing. That's the way of distracting from the fact that there's an organized infrastructure of terrorism that every day is building up plots against us. WellNet Daily had a story today that people need to go and read. It's a story that is reporting on the fact that through our porous borders and other machinations, we have allowed these people to build up within our country a cadre of folks who are waiting for the word to carry out domestic terrorism against soft targets with the aim of bringing this country to its knees, bringing it down, introducing it to disorder and chaos on a large scale. See? But don't think about that. Don't worry about that. Worry about what the IRS is doing, as if that's the immediate problem. Not the fact that we're being set up and that Benghazi was part of what would lead us to realize that the people we have placed in the White House could very well be working a strategy that collaborates with and comports with the strategy of the very people who are trying to kill us, telling us we're not at war so we won't prepare, telling us that we're not being attacked in a way that is systematic and organized and intentionally aimed at destroying our way of life so that we won't react to it in a way that starts to look around and ask why so many things that Obama has advocated and done and is practicing contribute to the disorder and the decay and the weakness that set us up for this defeat. See? And then we won't look closely at the fact that there was something about that whole Benghazi business that was connected with the Syrian situation. And the fact that there have been elements at work, apparently in the U.S. government, that have been helping to funnel support under the guise of opposing Assad to the very organizational infrastructure that was responsible for attacking us on 9/11. They don't want us to think about that, y'all. No, don't think about that. Move along. Don't think about the fact that we've been stockpiling ammunition. Don't think about the fact that we have been indoctrinating police forces. Don't think about the fact that we've been purging the military of Christian elements, the very elements most likely to oppose the abuse of military power against our military power, against the rights of our citizens. All this has been going on right in front of our eyes, but don't think about that. And then don't listen to the fact that, as Sarah Palin has pointed out, well, they're stockpiling this against civil disorder. And I'm thinking, yeah, but the question is, while we're looking at it and saying, oh, it's happening because of economic malaise or economic disorder. And meanwhile, if you read the WND story today, these terrorists have actually been recruiting people who don't, in terms of what they look like and so forth and so on, suggest that we're under attack from these Islamic terrorist forces. They don't want us to see that. Now, wouldn't that be special? We come under attack, all kinds of things a la Boston events recently, the killings in Boston. And the people who are associated with them are people whose outward look suggests that this is just some spontaneous reaction that then requires what, y'all? The kind of martial law that we saw enacted in Boston, that some people have recognized for what it is, a dress rehearsal for what they mean to do when these terrorist cadre unleash their attacks against us. What am I saying? What are you saying, Alan? Well, I'm saying, y'all, that if people are adding 2 and 2 in front of you, you'd better start to look for the answer 4, not go over there looking at 8, which is what they want you to do. See, the number 8, we're behind the 8 ball of the IRS. That may not be the thing that ought to preoccupy you. But the actions of this Obama faction in consolidating the tools and instruments that would be needed to fasten the structure of martial law and totalitarian tyranny on this country by force ought to be put together with the fact that we are now experiencing the implementation of a terrorist strategy aimed at producing the very kind of disorder, confusion, fear, and anger that would then provide an excuse for that fastening on the country of martial law. Am I getting this across, Stan? Are people thinking now?
I think.
Because I think it's time we stopped reacting. We stopped emoting. We stopped being poked and prodded by these people and stood back and took a strategic view and asked ourselves, not, did she lie? I, frankly, take it for granted. I want us to think about what these lies serve, what purpose, what strategy, is behind what they're doing. Because maybe as Americans start to do what our founders did, which is to think strategically, to anticipate the machinations of tyranny instead of just reacting to them, then maybe they'll finally wake up and realize that business as usual is over in this country. And we need to rise up as a people who still cares about its liberty to react against this real scheme. And you know how that should manifest itself, Stan? None of this Darrell Issa, we're not targeting Hillary for this investigation and so forth. If we had a real opposition party in the House of Representatives, they would have already put together the bill of impeachment that is necessary to guarantee that the president cannot hide anything from the scrutiny of the Congress. Because according to the Constitution, that so-called executive privilege shield disappears in cases of impeachment. And everything that Congress wants, it is to be immediately provided with. So why are they going along with this as if it's some normal situation, when the strategic aim of it, I think, is increasingly clear?
Again, Alan, you're on it. I led to that. You enunciated incredibly well. I believe that I'm going to ask Chief here, because a key element to this is local police, because their strategy to impose martial law on the country, even though they may start with a place here and a place there, is going to mean that the local police have to be nationalized, along with the quote-unquote National Guard and state police and all law enforcement authority, for them to have the sufficient strength, along with possibly some foreign troops, to impose their will in areas where they will be resisted. Chief?
I'm going to answer that, but first I just want to comment on something Dr. Key said that's very important, and his message was very good, that do not be fooled by appearances. And so we can be fooled into thinking that Barack Obama is the president. And in reality, if we look at Barack Obama's experience, he's never done anything. He's never had a job. When he was voting in office, unless he was voting to murder babies, he voted present. So he is not acting as the president, he's acting as a campaigner. You call him the pretender-in-chief. So we have to look at him as what he really is. He is a know-nothing that is in office. He is a campaigner, and we must take him on at that level. But now to answer your question, the local police have already been nationalized. Most of them have already received identification cards from Homeland Security, so that if there's some type of a disaster at a national level, they can appear there, present that ID card, and they're part of the crew. But I'm going to say it again, that at first, I believe that the local police, I'm going to eliminate some of the sheriff's offices, because many of the sheriff's offices are constitutional offices, and the sheriffs are working and elected by the people, so they will be exempt from this. But the city and local police are going to respond based on what the prosecutor tells them. The local police don't do their business every day by going and saying, "Oh, let me look at the Constitution. Is that constitutional or not?" No, they ask the prosecutor. The prosecutor says it's good to go. It's good to go. So at first, they're going to follow the rules of the federal government until they realize that they're stepping on their own fellow family, friends, and neighbors. And then I think there'll be a turn of events where that will happen. But it's going to be with the help of the county sheriffs and us, helping to educate our local police as that we're working on this together. We have to be a team together and not answering to the federal government in opposition to the Constitution.
We just have a couple of minutes left, and we could spend a couple of days on this. But let me perhaps ask you to wrap this up, Alan, by saying, or by predicting, I guess is what I'm saying, where you think this is going to go. This president politically is in a wounded situation, but most people aren't paying attention to the fact that he has self-inflicted these wounds. The press didn't uncover the IRS thing. They just walked in the door and said, "Hey, we apologize." For what? "Oh, we did this." You what? Then the Justice Department said, "Hey, we did all this." You what? "Well, we were doing this." That didn't come from whistleblowers. That came from these parties that did the acts. There is a nefarious reason. You've said it, but let's try and hone it down. What do you think is going to happen in the next period of time? Because I think that long before the 2014 election, major changes are going to come to our country.
Well, I think that's more than possible, Stan, but I think the nature of those changes and whether they portend the end of our free way of life or I think an example of the resolution of our people to hold on to it is really going to depend on what folks do over the next few months to get a better understanding of what is really happening, so that we're not just reacting to what they want us to react to in the way that they want us to react, because that means you're being manipulated. It's like a strategy that is often used in sword fighting, where by degrees you get your opponent to uncover himself because of the nature of your attacks, and he eventually ends up uncovering a vital part of his body so that you can stick the sword in and kill him. You manipulate him on the basis of using certain kinds of attacks, which he unwarily then responds to in a way to open himself up. Are we going to do that? Are we going to let ourselves be picked to death by such a strategy that reveals and exposes our greatest vulnerability? Or are we going to wake up, see the strategic aim of what is going on, and think through the way to thwart it? And that's what I've been trying to do on my blog. I pray that people will go and read the things that I've been writing, read the article I just wrote last week at WorldNet Daily, read the things I'll be following up with, because I'm trying to revive the kind of strategic thinking that our founders recommended, that they so capably did when they were fighting for our liberty, and that they recognized as essential to the vigilance of a people that intend to remain free. That aspect of the thought of Americans has been systematically discouraged, and therefore I think it has atrophied, and we need to wake it up, that faculty for strategic thinking. I think that it in part depended, as I have argued in the last couple of weeks, on the fact that we were a Christian culture, and that one of the things Christ prudently advised us by his example never to forget is that we live in the context of an adversary. The word Satan means the adversary. Adversary of whom? The adversary of God. And we are never free, therefore, of a situation in which folks are working and playing against us if we are standing for God's righteousness. And so we always have to be thinking in a chess-like fashion. What is the meaning of the moves that are being made by those who are seeking systematically to destroy what we are trying to build up in the way of justice and decency in this country? And I think people need to do this urgently, Stan. As the first way, the thing you have to do, if you're going to thwart a danger, is you have to wake up and you have to begin to focus all of your faculties, especially your thinking, on the nature of that danger, on the strategy it is employing, so that you can understand the best way to react to and deal with that. Final point, there has to be an opposition, Stan. You're not going to be able to deal with the threat that's coming against us in this very organized and systematic way if there is no opposition. And part of the difficulty here, I'll say it as I've said it over months and years now, is that we have people claiming to be the opposition, wearing a Republican label, who are not the opposition. Do we understand this yet? They are in fact not the opposition, and they're not behaving like the opposition. And I would argue the rubric for the next several weeks, if you're going to look at the Republicans in the Congress, if you're going to be making a judgment about whether they're any darn good, this is the one thing that you ought to understand. If they don't impeach, they are not an opposition party. If they are not doing everything in their power to make it clear to the American people that what we're looking at is high crimes and misdemeanors that are part of an effort to overthrow the Constitution of the United States, then you should not take them seriously as an opposition. And frankly, with McCain smiling at Hillary and Darrell Issa telling us that, well, the president and Hillary Clinton are not really in the focus of the investigation, why not? The Constitution vests the whole executive power in the person of the president. So if something's going wrong, the first thing you assume is that he's responsible until proven otherwise. Why aren't they assuming that? Because that's the assumption that would show respect for the Constitution, but apparently none of them respect it. So if you continue to see this kind of temporizing, this kind of halfway house, this kind of posturing without getting to the real heart of the problem, that ought to wake you up to the fact that we have at the moment no effective opposition to what is happening to our country. And you'd better get busy to make sure that such an effective opposition finds or creates a vehicle for itself.
Alan, thank you as usual for an extraordinary insight that when you strip back all of the verbosity and eloquence, is just plain old common sense. Chief Steve, thank you for your contributions. And folks, you have your charge. Get off your Obama and start doing something. Good night.
Good night.